Hello, everyone. It's almost 4 or 7 o'clock, depending where you're at. We're gonna wait about 5 minutes, hang out, chill, don't stress. This is a very low stress environment. We don't want anyone to be overthinking. That's my job. I overthink, I get stressed out, and I have a lot of fun with this. And I hope that someone we can all learn something today. So we're at 5 minutes after, then we'll start. I posted the agenda in the chat, so if you wanted to get an idea of what we're talking about, go ahead and look at that. So we're gonna wait about 5 minutes to get people settled in, hang out, and then we'll start.
Hello all.
Hello. Interesting crowd today. I believe there was an RAC meeting before this. I kind of got the half end of that. Kind of weird. Starting chapters is weird. Even though I'm myself trying to start a GSUS chapter. But the chapter organizing is, I would say, superfluous to the actual education understanding of the material condition from the individual perspective. Cool. Get some people in here. Make it look like I'm writing notes. Actually, I do need to write notes. They're not on this tab. Shield your eyes. Let's see this one. The next row. Oh, they are. They are over here. I just didn't pull it up. My notes. My notes. Dialectical extensionalism. Existential materialism. Material existentialism. I'll burn these last couple of minutes talking about a philosophy that I'm really interested in right now, really help build my understanding of the material condition. So it's an offshoot of phenomenological existentialism, which is an ideal form of existentialism. So existence as it is, right? We exist, we are here, we do stuff, we exist, we are here, and that's it. We exist. Existentialism and the understanding of existence is understanding that people are, things are, sticky notes are, they do, and here. The only meaning can be derived from an articulable relationship which you discern in the material condition. So you understand relationships which then derive a meaning between two objects. The objects in question most of the time are ideal notions. This is where we get thesis, antithesis into your synthesizing of your understanding of the material condition, dialectical materialism. So there's this offshoot of phenomenological existentialism breeds in dialectical materialism inside of that existential philosophy. So what I'm trying to gear at is removing any ideal notion that we have of the material condition and trying to understand our conditions as emerging from what is outside of us. I don't know if any of you people read Lenin, but Lenin goes over this many times in many different of his works in different books, understanding that processes emerge out of each other outside of the observer, right? So I always go to gravity always exists outside of the observer. So it's like, does the tree fall in the forest? It doesn't make a sound. Yes, simple, because we're understanding that the restrictions and the limitations of the material condition that we're understanding exists on Earth when we propose that conjecture, when we propose that little idea and thought. Does a tree fall in the forest and does it make a sound when no one's around? Yes, it does make a sound. It's just no one's around to hear it. So we understand that things exist as such. We shouldn't remove this fact and idea that, out of sight, out of mind, very silly. But phenomenological existentialism is this out of sight, out of mind kind of ideal philosophy. So it is that 1 minute till. I did post the agenda for today in the chat. So if you want to know what we're doing, we're about to start. We can start right now. So before we start, Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We do have these every Wednesday at around this time, 4 p.m. We do have these 7 p.m. If you're Eastern. So glad you're all here. Glad you can make it. We are running for an hour. Sometimes we do go over, but if you are restricted on time, please feel free to leave after the hour or anytime before. No one's holding you here, right? So to start us off, we're going to ask the question I've asked a couple times last year, just the year and the months ending 2024. What does it mean to strike? What is a strike, especially when we're talking about striking here at the General Strike US? We are a striking organization. We are a challenging authority, specifically US hegemonic authority, right? Liberal institution, imperial institution, and imperial forces we are challenging and striking against. But what does it mean to strike? So this is a very broad term. Most people would think striking as this full-on commitment, quit your job, picket fence, boycott to hell. And these notions can align with the strike is what we're talking about. But fundamentally to the core, a strike is doing whatever you can, however you can, when you can, where you can, up to your ability to defect from the system which continues the oppression for marginalized and classed groups. Not as simple. I would say simple, but it's not as simple as that. So a strike is doing whatever you can to, defect from the system. So whether it be you can quit your job and find somewhere else to work, okay, cool. Right? Can you boycott and do all this stuff? Okay, cool, you can do that. Can you start your own garden? That's a form of defecting because starting a garden means growing your own food. You don't have to buy food from a store. That's defecting. That's striking. That's going against the grain, going against the system. So striking is not this picket sign, wage, increase in wages or going out and telling your boss, hey, screw you, and then going back to work, right? Striking is more of this fundamental, I would say, a philosophy that we embody through the actions at which we materialize. And the materializations of those actions then therefore reproduce into the structures at which we get to see. So there's this all talk about this Black Panther survival programs, which I love. Love the Black Panther survival programs because though they materialized different actions and structures and processes at which reproduced and then emulated through the people into structures at which we see today. Free lunch, health clinics in certain neighborhoods, those exist because of the Black Panther survival programs. And all they did was materialize, right, their thoughts. They materialized what they saw, the contradictions inside of the neighborhoods, inside of the city of Oakland. Anywhere that they saw there was distress and there was this, I would say bad juju in the air. Just capitalism, basically. Address the contradictions through understanding their material conditions, understanding what they had, to work with, and then did it. So they emulated or they reproduced, or they first produced these structures, then they reproduced after people have kept going ahead and kept these systems and structures alive. This is where we get the free lunch, healthcare clinics, and whatnot and so forth. So what does it mean to strike? Striking is just defecting against the system as much as you can, right? No one's telling you, going out of your way to go ahead and do everything at once, right? Quit your job, find a homestead, grow your own food, help your community, all that all at once. Remember, this is a communal effort. Not everyone can do everything all at once by themselves. It's impossible, and it's an ideal notion to think so. We all are capable of doing whatever we can, however we can, to the capacities at which we are allowed to by physical limitations, right? So Karl Marx says no one is created equal, and this is true, right? Some people will produce more, some people will produce less, some people will consume more, some people will consume less. But this isn't established class society. This isn't established inherent, differences among people. This just establishes that people are the way they are. What do we do about it now? And this is the question that most liberal and most imperial institutions gloss over, or they just assume outright or assume directly that there is an inherent in human nature to be this greedy and selfish. I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't try and think that people are inherently greedy. Right? We are a product of our material conditions. And if the material conditions encourage us to be greedy, well, of course you're going to get greedy people, right? But if the material conditions encourage nice people, well, you will get nice people. And contrary to popular belief, there is a lot of nice people in the world, right? There's a bunch of nice people. There's a bunch of good people. There's also a bunch of bad people. There's a bunch of people in the world who embody all of this stuff. the materialized structures at which we organize under and therefore are affected by the material conditions that make us only encourage certain behaviors and qualities and values out of the individual. We become into the material condition. So when we do a strike, every single action that you do towards committing to this strike, right, boycotting as much as you can, not spending as much as you can, redirecting your attention, your value, and your, human decency towards your community are all factors in helping reproduce and emulate the functions of a built community, right? Of a community or of a space at which does not rely on corporate interest, private interest, or the accumulation of the monies. So when we go about this strike and how we do a strike, when we conduct a strike, right, you have these mass movements we would consider traditional strikes, right, picket fence or even marches, right? But when we're talking about a strike to its fundamental core, to its absolute, philosophy as a strike, it is doing as much as you can, when you can, however you can, to the capacities which are available to defect against the system. As I always said, not everyone can quit their job. You shouldn't be quitting your job, because that, as we understand, is, at the very least, dialectical materialists, right? You may not be a Marxist-Leninist, adopt communism, but understanding dialectically to the material condition, can't quit your job if that job sustains your material condition, sustains that paycheck for the food, sustains that paycheck, your paycheck sustains your rent, right? Your water, your safety, your comfort. All of these are basic human needs at which you need to survive, and we need you to survive so that we can actually materialize a revolution, right? No one's going out and, asking you to do all this great and grand things. People say a lot of things, right? But it's up to you to materialize the actions that you feel first most comfortable and are able to materialize out of the capacities at which you're able to, right? So can't run a marathon, don't run a marathon. Start small, right? Can't do like 100 push-ups, start small. We all start somewhere. Some people start a little higher, quote unquote. Some people start a little lower. But the fact that you do start says a lot, because most people don't even get to starting. But that's a whole other thing. So when we do talk about striking, right, it's not all this big grand gesture. Reduce striking to its most fundamental level to feel comfortable about committing to these actions of the strike, right? So keep your job, keep doing what you need to do, but slowly, gradually decentralize yourself and dissent against the system, right? So if you do buy McDonald's now, slowly get yourself off of McDonald's, right? Or if you go to Walmart, if you buy on Amazon, slowly cancel your subscriptions, or do as much as you can to what you're allowed to, right? Because some people actually need this stuff. Capitalism provides convenience to people, right, who have these certain, restrictions and limitations that are not as easy to let go of. Some people need the services that, unfortunately, that capitalism provides, what people provide as a result of capitalism, right? So most people need services that are provided now. So this is not telling you to go out and just, this is almost a saying as to break away from the go back to your own country, right? That's basically saying go back to your own country. Do that. Can't do that. It's unreasonable. It's unrealistic too. So be realistic, be material, but understand that do as much as you can, however you can, right? Because we're all doing the same thing. We're all doing as much as we can, right? I can't do everything. You guys can't do everything by yourself. This is why we need a collective. This is why we need to engage in community. Next little bullet point. So engaging in community, right, is one of those functions that you could do to striking, because community is the antithesis of individualism, right? Individualism and believing that you can do everything that, you can do yourself. As capitalism says, you can do everything yourself as an individual in this system because of capital, because of your ability to exploit individuals, because of your ability to, be free. Not just free as, this free speech, free gun holding American, but this freedom to care about your community, this freedom from your ability to take care of your community, right? So we build community as a defense against individualism and as a spear. So community is both the shield and the spear to both fascism and individualistic ideologies like capitalism and liberalism. So engaging in community, I make the distinction between being nice and being kind. So this is one of those fundamentals that you can take away from this. If there's one thing you should take away from this, it's probably this: being nice versus kind. So I break this down into reproduction versus reactionary, or this should be flipped. I say nice is ice, kind is fine, right? So reproduction, being kind, and gives out this this aura, this energy, but it gives out this understanding that you are there for the people, you are there for everyone bigger than yourself. Like you're contributing to a force bigger than yourself, which upheld by the people or upheld by the community. Being nice, right, is a gesture which fulfills a sort of personal or a individual sense of comfort, right? So being nice is just for you primarily, right? You can be nice and still have it help people, but the end goal of you being nice is for yourself, that good feeling that you get from yourself, right? More so thinking about yourself, right? This is where we want to break away from that nice versus kind, right? Kind, you can give away your time. Time, you can help your community. Time, or being kind, that you can do stuff that other people would, couldn't by themselves. You do it together. Being nice is like charity. We talked about this last week. It was a couple weeks ago. Charity versus mutual aid, right? Charity is this ability to spend your personal and private fortunes on the less fortunate because you deem them worthy of, which is kind of scummy. But mutual aid is this mutual, right, benefit. It's where you're doing nice stuff in a charity. You are feeling good about giving away your money, because you individualize that labor. I call it liquid labor money. But being kind is mutual aid. It's doing services and committing to actions which help the community at large, and more so, the community at large and people, yourself, all included. Being kind is a step forward to building community. Being nice, right? It's like liberalism. It's this layer which says, only in name only, that you are doing for the community when it is not. You saw the whole fiasco 2024, what the Democrats ran on the campaigns, for absolute fuck shit show. Incredible. That could be used as a metaphor for nice and kind, right? It was nice, quote unquote, to see the Democrats do all this nonsense and stuff, and the whole platform that they ran on, people's right. But it's only in name only, right? It's name only that the Democrats and, the broader U.S. government does anything, because it is liberal. Being kind is to defect against that, nice nature. Being kind is genuine. It's authenticity of being a good person, right? So being kind reproduces, these factors and functions of what builds a community. Being nice is set on the schemes of reactionary thought. It's you see something, then you do something. That is a reactionary nice thing, right? So you say you have personal fortunes and you have all this money to give away. And you're like, I have like a gajillion dollars. I'm going to give away less than 10.101% of my wealth from this small charity. And then everyone's like, oh my God, look at that guy. Just gave away so much money to that charity. Let's go praise him. That's the lies of liberal system, the capitalist system, that tells you that people, right, are good because they give away money. Like a big draw, a hard line there. Giving away money is not of like a kind act. It's a nice thing to do, but it's not very kind. It's not genuine, because that money is at your discretion. There is no the only feel good is from the individual giving away their money, but there's no feel good to anyone else. At large to the community, there is no kindness. There is no genuine warm feelings like, oh my God, great. Now what? Right? You give away money, now what? There is no reproduction in that. It's just a simple one action. It's a reactionary type to, this charity versus mutual aid, that kindness. So engaging in your community, understand that the actions you do reproduce, right, themselves out of what you do. So if you are kind to your people, right, you could get kind people back to you. But more importantly, you set the foundations of people being kind, whether people be kind tomorrow, next week. You keep doing that and you reproduce, you set the foundations of people being kind. If it never materializes, it never becomes, and therefore it never exists. So engaging in your community, going on strike, all these beautiful things, you have to understand it comes from a purpose and an intent. And this ability to, right, and this ability to be nice or be kind comes from your ability to, materialize your thoughts, and from the strike, what you think a strike is. So that's more airing on existentialism, a little more philosophies, which is what we're going to get to in the discipline to education. So going over, what a strike is, how a strike functions, what it means, not just picket fences, right? Not just quitting your job, but doing as much as you can for the community, right? Striking is also going to the farmer's market. Striking is also going to flea markets, talking to your fellow community members at community centers, just walking down the street, not contributing to consumerism. That's striking. You can do a lot of things when it comes to striking. And being kind versus being nice is one of those things, right? Nice gestures are ones that are one-sided. nice gestures are gestures that you can get away with, shelling out money, right? It's like, I'll pay for this, stop bothering me. It's nice that you have money, but it's not kind. There's no human interaction. There's no community building in being nice. So kindness reproduces. Nice is being reactionary. We don't want to be reactionary. We want to be principled and disciplined to a theory, disciplined to education, which brings us over to the understanding. Dialectical materialism, love that stuff. And Huey P's revolutionary suicide. And this goes in, so we're talking about revolutionary suicide first, as going a little backwards from what the note says. But revolutionary suicide is this idea that we do stuff and then we die. Eventually, revolutionary suicide is doing stuff that goes against the system, dissents against the system, building structures for community, and then dying. Huey P. Newton goes and contrasts this idea against reactionary suicide. And reactionary suicide is this complicity in the system, this non-beneficial factors to the liberation of Black people, of course, Huey P. Newton, Black Panther Party, but moreover, right, the oppressed and marginalized classes and groups that capitalism has divided and conquered under imperialism. Right. So revolutionary suicide is the opposite of reactionary suicide in the sense that instead of being complicit and, being a consumer and contributing to this employer-employee dynamic of the mode of production, revolutionary suicide is this: you are still going to die. You might as well go ahead and dissent against the system. You might as well build structure, build community, analyze the contradictions of capitalism, address them, and then analyze and materialize those syntheses that you got from those analysis of the contradictions, right? So a contradiction in capitalism is this: work smarter, not harder. But then you go ahead and say that you worked hard because you have 5 businesses. It's a little contradiction there. Are you working hard because you have 5 businesses, or are you working smarter because you can manage 5 businesses, right? Which one is it? There's a lot of contradictions that you can get from capitalism. You don't have to dig deep. But it is addressing these contradictions in capitalism and the privatized mode of production as a whole, and then addressing them, synthesizing them of what you understand it, to benefit the human factor, to benefit the community, or to benefit the opposite of individualism, which is community, right? So revolutionary suicide is this: you're still doing stuff, right? The suicide part is just saying that you're going to die under a system. You might as well be revolutionary, right? If you were to and want to materialize the liberation of the oppressed classes, and in this case, of course, the liberation of Black people in America, right? And then we go about and going off the Black Panther Party, just a little side note, there is this little quote unquote mantra, but there's a principled understanding that once U.S. imperialism, a hegemonic mode of thought, disappears, so does the Black Panther Party. There is no reason and need for a Black Panther Party, for a BPP or TPP, if the system that they fight against is gone. So is the party that fights against the system. They both go away. And this also goes into the, if you read Lenin, the withering away of the state, right? Class society withers away when there is, a force that demolishes it, it smashes it and obliterates it. Capitalism and liberal ideology and U.S. hegemonic mode of thought, imperialism, all maintain class. So it will never go away under this society. This society is class society, and it is built on the perpetuations of class. What does the dictatorship of the proletariat do? Intentionally and intelligibly breaks down and decentralizes the state from the inside out, right? As much as we want to organize grassroots from the bottom up, outside in, there will be at point some need, right, in some shape or form, some sort of vanguard, a detachment, political conscious of the working class that leads political for the purposes of destroying the state, right? Most people believe that the dictatorship of the proletariat is just one hand onto another when it comes to oppression of classes. It is one hand to another at which the hand is going to kill itself, basically. That hand is within the power of the conscious, politically understand individual that is the vanguard of the proletariat, literally strangling itself, right? So right now, the bourgeois have the hand of the state and the military, the mode of production and the means of production and their ownership, right? Using it for class oppression, all willy-nilly, all doing this because of man wants to, right? But when the dictatorship of the proletariat occurs and happens, then you have this wielding of the state and it's going to choke itself to death. Not because, this is like destroying the state to destroy it, but choke itself methodically. We went about this last week, gradual decentralization of the state after the dictatorship of the proletariat is instilled, because at what point or at what point do we have such a force for the people, a vanguard, and a proletariat that is capable of taking down, or at least in some sections of controlling the state? There had to have been already some form of mutual aid. There had to have been some already form of community, strong sense of coalition building established before the dictatorship of the proletariat. There are going to be sections of the economy, sections of politics and society as a whole that will already have been decentralized the moment we take, as a dictatorship of the proletariat, the state as the working class, or the rulers of the working class as the ruling class. There it is. So the working class as the ruling class, there is already going to be structures in place that the state does not need to fuck with, right? So the state exists as this, as we say, one class oppressing another. And that's what it is. Whether it be your bourgeois class, the proletariat class, whether it be your monarch class versus the serfs class, master and slave class, there's always two classes. And the classes separate themselves between who is in the government, the state, and who is the people, who the state is oppressing over. So in the dictatorship of the proletariat, we strangle ourselves as the state to submission. We decentralize all of these, processes. So when we talk about military, right, that's probably one of the first things to go. We don't need a privatized state. We talk about the armed people. Everyone will be a part of the military, essentially. Everyone will have this right to arms. But understanding that we won't just go overnight from it, everyone being an armed people for the people, right, and armed persons of the working class, understands that everyone is capable of committing revolution. But of course, right now in this US hegemonic thought, no one thinks that we are capable of revolution. And this is the turn of the mode of thought that we need to have occur in order to materialize such a revolution, right? In order to materialize such a dictatorship of the proletariat. But going back to revolutionary suicide, it is these factors and it is these structures and systems that we are to materialize before we die, because we're here to die anyways. Huey P was like, we're going to die. It's going to happen. We might as well be revolutionary about it. We might as well have systems and structures that help the people, help the community at large, serviceable to people in the future of the revolutionaries, right? Of our, because Rosa Luxemburg's, the Eastern Bloc philosophers, Marx's, Lenin's, and you have your Michael Parenti's and all these such people who helped build structures in the material conditions which they existed in for the future revolutionaries, to understand what the world is materially about. And so as we do the same thing now, right? All of the structures, all the movements, all of the power at which we, exert onto the material condition is used by our future, if not us, revolutionaries to understand the material conditions better, because we are part of history. We do history. We all commit to history all the time, every single moment, every single second. There's a 20 years of history that I'm responsible for, 20 and some odd change. There's some 40 years of history that some people are responsible for. But we don't take that into consideration because we think of history as this ancient, in black and white in the textbook, right? Or in some book or in some literature that's like, absolute and divine. We make history all the time, right? Revolutionary suicide is a part of history, but we're committing it right now, right? Dialectical materialism, which we'll get in, is part of history, but we're committing it right now, right? US hegemonic mode of thought is history, but it's being committed right now. We just don't see it in that specific light because we don't think of it as history. We think of this as the moment now, out of history, right? Somehow as this moment in time in the recent history is somehow detached from this, previous mode of living in society. We are currently living in history now, right? I love when we make comparisons. Anne Frank and Martin Luther King were alive in the same time period, but we think of them as like two completely separate, time frames, right? There's like a couple empires that were alive when some pharaoh. Don't quote me on any of this. But what I'm trying to get at is that we live in history all the time. We materialize it all the time. Even in the past year, couple of years of what you did is a part of history. Now, is it recorded? I don't know. If you recorded it, great, you can look back on it. But if it's not lost to history. It embodied inside of you, or it became a part of you, reproduced and emulated through all of the past actions, compounded into the material now of what you exist as. So all of your past actions in which you consumed and experienced all are in the now, right? All a part of you, part of the me. Whatever you did, whatever I did, whatever everyone else did in this little sphere, this little earth thing, compounded from the past into the very now. So revolutionary suicide, great. Love the book, but everyone should read it. All Power to the People, straight up, because reading is great. Talking about reading is great. Having and cultivating the mode of thought Great. But of course, the end all be all, as Karl Marx says, philosophers have been thinking about changing the world, but the point is to actually change it, you know? So let's go back to our agenda. Dialectical materialism, discipline to education. So we talked about revolutionary suicide, right? Read the book, it's all great. But understanding that there's a difference between dying for the system and dying for the people. That's what Huey P make the distinction of. It's like protesting for the system, meaning that you are complicit in the consumerism, in the mode of production which houses this privatization of capital, this employer and employee relationship, reactionary suicide, this complicity. And then revolutionary suicide is this, defiance against the system. No more employers, no more employees. We are people. We are humans. We will work with each other however we need to. We don't need this formalities of, silly instructions of capital and what to do with it, right? We, the people, are pretty capable and competent of what to do. There's a revolutionary suicide, great. Dialectical materialism, great mode of thought and understanding. So every time I describe dialectical materialism, break it down into two. So dialectical materialism as the whole is the theory of development by Karl Marx. But, Karl Marx and Engels never called it dialectical materialism. They just went along with whatever, their mode of thought and their analysis was, and it stayed consistent. And that consistency was later to be found by Lenin, dialectical materialism. Break it down into two. Dialectical. So being a dialectic is understanding, and you have to understand Hegelian dialectics. But to break it down simply is three things. A preposition, a thesis, an antithesis, just the contradictions inside of the thesis, and then addressing those contradictions to produce the synthesis. So basically what you're doing is you're looking at something, you're saying, there's something wrong with it. And then you go ahead and fix it, repair it, or, synthesize it into something new. And it's like, that's a little bit better. So you're basically making revisions on a previous thought, right? Understanding what it exists as, how it exists in the material condition or in your, in your idea and your thoughts. And then coming out with a new idea that more aligns with, and this is what we get at for the materialism part, what we get at to the material condition, what is true to the material condition. I always go to gravity. When things drop, it dropped. You hold things up and they drop. It happens all the time. This transcends language. Everyone on earth understands that when you drop something, it goes to the floor, it goes to the ground. That's something that language does not need to convey because it is a fundamental and absolute truth of the material condition that exists, same for everyone, specifically here on this earth rock, this little space rock thing. At the dimensions and at the physics, the speeds at which it does, we all experience it all the time. You don't need to tell me that this is called gravity, or someone who doesn't know English can just say, yeah, I know what that is in their language, right? But being a dialectic is understanding that there is contradictions in everything that we understand and observe, right? So a contradiction would say, this falls because God made it so. Let's analyze that for a second, right? Let's analyze whether that's true or not. Our material sciences do a better job of explaining this than my word alone, but understanding that our material conditions are best explained by material sciences. So like evolution, we go to biology for that, right? Gravity, we go to physics for that. We go to these understandings and articulations and extrapolations of the material condition by people who hold way more authority in those fields than I ever would or ever do. I'm no physicist, but I can tell you that things fall, right? Caveman didn't need to be physicist to know that parabolic curves affected spear throwing. They just threw the spear understand that things fall when you threw it. With enough force, you could chuck a spear and then hit a boar in the head, and now you have dinner. That's all the means and ends at which the caveman or, which the primitive human thought of. They didn't think about, AB calculus. They didn't think about the curvature and the parabolic curves of what's going on with the spear, the exact spear tip head and the aerodynamic. None of that was ever in mode of thought. None of that was ever they just understood how stuff worked and made it benefit to their advantage, right? Or made it so that they can utilize that within the material condition. So we all have this natural sense of dialectics. We all have this natural sense of, hey, something's wrong. Let's address it and then fix it. That's like a basic rudimentary dialectic. It's like seeing something, knowing how it can be better, making it better, right? Very elementary, very basic dialectic. So there's more to that. But when we talk about materialism, which is where we attach dialectics to, materialism is the material condition and where everything is sourced out of, because we are, the product of the material condition. We are what we surround ourselves with and we are what we consume, right? We are not inherently anything besides just a human. Just by being us blood, human, flesh, and, cool people, right? Really cool, or sometimes uncool people, but made us to by the material condition. So materialism, as part of the dialecticals, is understanding that there are restrictions and limitations at which the mind does not account for, but the material conditions does. They do. And they do all the time, consistently. I'm so glad the material conditions are pretty consistent, right? Every time I drop this, it's going to fall. I'll do it again. I'll do it again. Oh yeah, hold on. I'll do it again. Every single time it's consistent. Every single time you find this phenomena, you are going to discover its absolute truth in relation to us and the existing material condition. As we were saying, Lenin, right? Outside of the observer does phenomena occur. That's how you know it exists in the material condition, right? So rain and water will just act and behave even if none of us humans were here, right? They would still do that stuff. It would still steam up under heat. It would still freeze up under cold, and it would still provide nourishment for those of, the biologicals who need it. Our carbon peoples, our carbon-based peoples and life forms. But dialectical materialism as a whole is this understanding that, hey, something isn't right. I'm going to fix it to the restrictions and limitations of the material condition. So dialectical materialism, understanding that things occur, yes, but I can't just think of a solution and then make it happen, right? I'm going to end world hunger right now. Shit, it didn't work. That's the ideal versions of it. That's like dialectical idealism. It's like I can think of a solution, but didn't materialize. Dialectical materialism, understanding that the restrictions and the limitations of the material condition form and contort our ability and our capacities to change the material condition. Can't fly, so we make machines that fly. Can't produce 10,000 bunk cakes, so make a machine that does it, right? Or, materialized labors at which does it. We all go ahead and bash capitalism for being a shitty mode of production, which it is. But we must thank, begrudgingly, capitalism for showing us how to materialize organizations of producing such, right? So under feudalism, there was no such this vast, competent and comprehensive organization of labor at which we do see now, right? All of these factories and such, and all of these tools and all of the organizations at which we commit to under these, organizations, it all helps us, quote unquote, right? So factories were built, cars were made, right? Feudalism didn't have cars, well, technological advances and such. They had carriages, but to the producing that many at that capacity at whatever level, right? We don't thank capitalism. We acknowledge that capitalism done it, shown us the way, but we're no longer going to organize this exploitive manner in which the boss and the employee relationship maintains. We understand now how to produce the automobile. We can now say goodbye to the capitalists and be like, thanks for showing us how to do it. We don't need you anymore. That is basically the point and purpose of the dictatorship of the proletariat. It's saying that thanks for showing us how to do it. Now let's decentralize it to the people, and then the people can go about doing whatever they need to do with it, right? So when you get into law and legal structure as well, it's the same principle, right? Not every law is going to apply, especially for the region, right? Not every municipality is going to conform to the what we say, because it's what we say. It's not a part of the material condition separated from the individual. Our voice exists and our laws exists within the material condition at which those restrictions apply. And so I would say our law and our legal system is a reactionary law, a reactionary and legal form of thought, because it reacts, right? When something happens, then it does something. There is no critical analysis. There is no dialectical materialism inside of our, legal system that would not prevent, but understand better how to construct our, societal behaviors and norms and modes of habit and such. So dialectical materialism helps us understand the material conditions as it is, basically, right? No longer thinking that I think, therefore I am, breaking away from this ideal sense of the understanding of the material condition, thinking that people are inherently bad, right? Thinking that things just can't be fixed because it can't. Things can't change because it can't. It's silly. That is putting up mind blocks. That is anti-revolutionary if you think about it. That is anti-striking, because, we're trying to materialize a strike here, guys. We're trying to, U.S. hegemony, boo, capitalism, boo, imperialism, boo, get that out of here. We don't want that. But how do we do that? We analyze the contradictions at which make forth those, structures, those imperialism. So when we talk about imperialism specifically, there's a lot of contradictions in imperialism, capitalism, as to what it says it needs and wants to do. And we go about this when we're talking about philosophies, because capitalism and communism, socialism are all just no more than ideologies, at which the materialization of those ideologies are usually attributed to the exact sayings of what those ideologies are. So we'll take capitalism, for example. capitalism says free and fair market, free, freedom, individual, natural liberties and such. But what do you see in capitalism? Poverty, inequality, concentration of power, oppressive hierarchies. You see all these things. Now let's look at communism, right? What does communism say? Community, communal, and all this stuff. You're trying to establish this classist, stateless, money society, or more true to what the doctrine says at Engels, the doctrine of the conditions of liberation of the proletariat, whichever definition you want to use for communism. We turn towards those socialist experiments to see what they've done. Kinda. Yeah, kind of. But no one's ever done it, though, right? No one's ever done materializing a socialism, right? Before our, socialist experiments in the 1900s. No one's ever done it. No one's going to get it first try. Do you think capitalism got it first try? Fuck no. You think capitalism got free, perfect market or, free market trade perfected the very first time they established it in 1300 feudalism? Gotta be kidding me. There's no way. And there is no way. There was no way. And that's not how it happened. You see, when capitalism emerged from feudalism, the emerging process itself was an addressing of the contradictions inside of feudalism, but the contradictions stated were of this ideological contradictions, right? So as man exists existentially as a single human, man thought more so Rousseau, Locke, Descartes, Voltaire, and all of these freedom thinking individuals like, hold on, wait, the king, he ain't all it. The king ain't it. The king, he cool guy, but he's not all of it. We are people. We are men. We are free. We have free thought, and therefore we have natural rights and liberties that are unalienable to us. We deserve more. And this is what they rode on for the bourgeois revolutions. We are free people. Establish the free market. No more king, divine right and rule. We are men. Dun, 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 dun. So when we go about in thinking the capitalist ideology, we of course stem from this liberal, this freedom, natural liberties and rights. He hath mixed his labor with and therefore made it his property type shit people, So the capitalist ideology is the liberal ideology, right? Liberal ideology founds capitalism in its most mature stages, imperialism as well, because people are free to do whatever they want. Right? People are free to make so much money. People are free to start businesses. People are free to prosper. And on the other hand, people are free to suffer. People are free to be homeless. People are free to starve. People are free to do a lot in this society because it's up to you. It's up to you, the individual. It's up to you to do everything, right? Isn't that what we say about people in capitalism when we grew up in the U.S. hegemony? It's all up to you. You must do everything. Think about yourself. It was very stinky. I smell it and I'm like, man, that is gross. Get me out of here. Don't want to be here anymore. Let's do revolutionary suicide so that we can break away from this U.S. hegemonic thought. This thought that demonizes people for being people. This mode of thought that tramples on the understanding of that people are, right? People are the way they are, but not inherently. People are the way they are because of what the system made it, more so the material conditions allowed them to be, right? So if you had a bunch of stuff in your material condition immediate to you, right? If you had all of your subsistence, all of your needs, you're like, what else can I do? Because we are people of becoming. Humans are creatures of becoming and expression. And so when we are quote unquote satisfied with our conditions, right, we will often seek beyond or more to what we have in the material condition. We will do such naturally because we are people of becoming. And so when people have sustained the material conditions, right, let's say you have all of your houses, you bought your house, you own your land, the house you stay in is yours, right? You can provide yourself and, if you have a family, the food and the water, the safety and the comfort and all the logistics that what it takes to take care of a family, all there for you. You have it. You can do that. You will end up seeking more. This is where you get your hobbies. This is what you get your aesthetics, your conspicuous consumptions. But capitalism raises the bar so high that people think they need a lot more than what they, actually need, right? So here's capitalism. Here's the white picket fence model, as I like to say. Here is the nuclear family, your white picket fence, your male and wife, man and female, husband and wife, right? This 2 kids, this nice big house, this 2-3 bedroom where you can keep the kids, this nice white picket fence, this man-made lawn, this entire backyard that you're not using. Perfect life for an American. Nuclear family, this is what everyone strives for. This is what everyone tells you to strive for. So capitalism has set the bar. This is what you should achieve. But how much does that take to achieve? How many resources does that take to maintain? So a white picket fence and a man-made lawn and a big old house, right? It takes a lot of labor. It takes a lot of time. But people in capitalism can do that easily. They don't have to learn about how to be a laborer, a bricklayer, a carpenter, a plumber, electrician. No one needs to do none of that. No one has to be landscaping. Fuck that. No one can do a concrete lane. Nah. All you need is money. It's shmoney, and that's all you need. And I'm saying money is a bad thing, but money enables this kind of behavior. So instead of being the plumber, electrician, the carpenter, and the bricklayer, and the concrete, all these things at once, you could just buy someone's time to do that, buy the profession to do that. That is true freedom. This is true freedom which we exist in. The ability to buy people's time. That's crazy, right? So you may not think of it like that, but that's actually how it works. When you buy a property, hundreds of thousands, let's say $1 million, I live in California. All houses are $1 million in California, basically. It doesn't matter if it's a shack, doesn't matter if it's more than $1 million if it's a mansion. But in capitalism, right, in this $1 million homes, all of that costs after the inflation of corporate greed goes into the paying of the labor of the carpenters, goes into paying the labor and the resources used, right, the raw materials and labor is used into constructing that home, that house, that property. So what do? You don't need to be any of those special professions. All you need is money, about $1 million's worth or so. And then you go to the property owner of that and be like, hey man, I would like to buy some of this bullshit. And then he's like, you know what? I think I'll let you buy some of that bullshit. You do some trades, you get a house, that's all nice and dandy. But what occurs in that conspicuous consumption, in this obvious consuming, in this, I bought a house, so what of it? You leave inconspicuous production. Never the names are told of the carpenters, never the names are told of the bricklayers, never the names are told of any of the people who labored that property, erected it from the ground, and used it with the raw materials and labor in hand to make the house in which they reside in, live in, spend times in, make memories in, and all the such and so forth. Capitalism strips away community by leaving us blind to what has materialized. I'll use this room for example. I don't know who the fuck built this. I don't know who built my laptop. I don't know who built all of these stuff and all of the phones and which not. I don't know the names of the people who built it. I just know that through my money, hello, me selfish person, the use of money, we all buy products at which we don't know not the names, but more so the processes at which happen to materialize such the goods and services that we, consume every day. So I drink out of a water bottle every single day. Don't know who the person who made that is. Thank God for them, because now I have water. And if it was, thanks to capitalism, I'm free to do whatever I want. And if it wasn't that water bottle, it'd be something else. But that at the core removes people from community. It's this throwing away ideology or this mindset that I'll just go somewhere else. Be careful. You can go somewhere else only for so far, right? You can go to different options only so far. And capitalism has only made it through advance of technology convenient and available for people to just go wherever they want. It deroots people from their community to infatuate and be involved in convenience capitalism, right? Your Amazon. This is why when we were talking about canceling Amazon subscriptions, cancel them, the convenience, boycotting and striking, no more Starbucks and all that. Say no to convenience by capitalism, because the convenience you should be getting is from your community, right? The people who you call your neighbor, the people who you see at these stores, right? Every so often, you're like, oh, hey, Joe, what's going on? Oh, nothing. Capitalism at it again. I hate my life too. Right? All of your casual conversations that you have with your people, those are the people that matter. Those are the people you should be relying on when you're building community. But of course, it all starts with the mode of thought. Because everyone, right, as we understand, this mode of thought is liberal. It's individualistic. It's I, me. I must do whatever I can with my job, with my money, with my means to support me. Right? This lack and the stripping away of community. And it's unfortunate that it does occur, but it's not surprising, right? It's unfortunate that it happens, but it's not surprising because we understand where those modes of thought materialized and emerged from. Capitalism, imperialism, U.S. exceptionalism, U.S. hegemonic thought, this I, me, so much better than everyone else, right? We are Americans. We will do whatever you want. I'm an American. I'll do, it's I, me. It's this mode of thought which separates people at the fundamental core. So when we do talk about community building and striking and engaging in community, this reproductive versus reactionary modes of, being nice and kind, it all comes from how people think about the world. So I know as we're all much and eager to go out and build community, we must also understand the threat of community destroyers, which also tropismatic or innate, like automatic or intentional, right? So whether it be automatic or intentional, there will be opposition and force because that's how the material conditions exist as, right? You're going to be seeing and making forces from which all directions in which you exist in, even when attempting a community building event or a revolution. right? You're always going to be met with some sort of force, a backlash to maintain and conserve conservatism, the status quo, and the modern quote unquote material conditions. So when we go out, we must learn about defense, right? As Marxist-Leninists, dialecticals, or as communists, we're not ban guns. We know armed struggle is the way to go. Violence against the violent system, great. Non-violence against a non-violent system, great. Non-violence against a violent system, boo. Violence against a non-violent system, boo. But that's what the capitalist does. Right? That's what the people in the state do. Violence against the non-violence, right? Bashing protesters, and then non-violence against violence. You're gonna get shot. So self-defense. Always understand that you have within your power to arm yourself for the struggle of building and doing a revolution. Arm yourself. Don't be afraid of picking up a gun or defending yourself. That is revolutionary suicide, right? You will die. Well, yeah, I don't want to die, but you will die for the people. You're not dying for a fascist. You'll never catch me die for a fascist. That's crazy. But it is this understanding that building community, this dialectical materialism, understanding this mode of thought comes from the individual person first. And that's who makes up the community. Individual people make up the community. So when we individualize individuals, there's no more community, because then you cannot build a community, right? We set up a community a bunch of times, say it like 3 times fast. But building community starts with the mode of thought. It starts with how you think. And then, of course, sharing that education, sharing that thought. Be like, hey, think about it like this. Instead of this US exceptionalism, instead of the me, I. It's this, think about it like a community. Think about it like this. Think about, encourage and engage with the thought. Have within your material conditions the ability to sympathize and empathize with your people. To build a community is to get to know people that you don't like, unfortunately. But what you can stand in solidarity against is the overarching class oppression that exists between our state and the people. Because even Lenin and Stalin agreed that the state is there to oppress the people. But more specifically, the state is there as one class to oppress another class. The dictatorship of the proletariat is no more the workers oppressing bourgeois, right? It's no more the working class, the hardworking, the proletariat people, just the people in general, oppressing the capital owning individuals. So it's the laboring individuals again, versus now in our material conditions, right? In our modern 21st century, the early 21st century, it is the bourgeois, it is the capital owning, it is the privilege, quote unquote, oppressing the minority, the impoverished, the disenfranchised, because of the relations they want to establish and maintain capital, right? The relations of what they have. They want to be the owner so that they can oppress. They don't want us to be owners because they know that we can oppress them back, right? As a people collective. So most people think of the dictatorship of the proletariat as one hand heading off to another, and where one class is then going to oppress the same class, right, at which they domain over. Quite contrary. Mutual aid and the dictatorship of the proletariat may not and probably will not look like someone sitting a proletariat Marxist looking as a president. You're probably never going to catch a Marxist president here in the U.S. A dictatorship of the proletariat will most likely, if not look like, a decentralized organization from the ground up, which reaches hand from the top down of the vanguard party. So we do it ourselves. We do it right here on the ground. Right here on the ground is where the real change happens. It's where the structures materialize and reproduce from. All the vanguard does is amplify our voices. If we have no structures in place in which to maintain a general strike, right, that's what we're trying to do, there would be no voice to amplify. So therefore, we must have all of these structures competent and in place for an eventual, right, whether it may not be or does, a vanguard to amplify the voices. And amplification means that bringing of the trades and practices at which one region did and worked for them to adapt it to other regions, which will help the liberation and decentralization of their commitments and of their struggles, right? Because every single struggle is different. Not every single one struggle is the same and makes up and constitutes the same amount of contradictions and conditions which allow for that struggle to be identified and labeled as a certain struggle. So the struggle is very unique to both geographic and of the ideological differences that make up that little pool of contradictions. So the conditions of each struggle different. Dialectical materialism helps us understand the struggle. Revolutionaries understand, or suicide helps us understand how to go about that, building of, defecting against the system. Engaging in community must be reproductive and being kind, be intentional and be genuine. Don't try and go ahead and try and have this nice type of attitude, this charity type of attitude, And striking, of course, is this mode of thought that it aligns with very much revolutionary suicide. Striking is just dissenting against the system, just going against it, going against the grain. So I think I've yapped on long enough. It is 5:54, which is incredible. So I'll leave these last couple minutes, 5 minutes for questions. So I know I've yapped on for a long. There's a lot of stuff, but the agenda pretty much we talked about there. So questions, great. Type them out. We'll talk about it. If you want to speak them out, we can talk right now. I'll be up 5-10 minutes after 5, or after 7, or after 8. So let me know. I'll be here. This is a recorded session, by the way. Yes, comrade.
You mentioned, you were talking about the ability of buying people's time and how it goes against the point you were making. And I was curious what you thought about like time banking, mutual aid efforts, where you actually buy people's time.
I engage in time
right?
baking now. Yeah, I love time baking.
Very
Time baking
cool.
is great. Time baking is one of those things that you can detach yourself away from the system, right? So instead of relying on money, you rely on people's time. And I use this example, right? So let's say I have tools. I'm a mechanic. I can fix cars, but I don't have, let's say, the means to mend my clothes because I can't buy new clothes. I'm also strapped on cash, but I want my clothes fixed. I go to a seamstress, be like, "Hey, you want any car problems?" And they're like, "Yeah." Like, in this specific example, I'll use 2 hours to change an alternator or something, or 2 hours to, do a basic service, oil change and all that. And all they have to do is just mend my clothes for those 2 hours. And I'm like, okay, cool. Trade. I can't mend clothes. You can. You need a fixed car. I can fix a car. Let's make it happen. Let's make it work. And that's it. And then we go our merry way. And if something else happens, more time banking, more community building, more, instead of going through this middleman of like, let me pay this guy so that I can get the service from you, and then you have to get the money from that guy so then you can commit to, you remove the middleman in time banking. It's great.
I love that. What if you have to, what about the materials you buy? Like you mentioned mechanics, so what about the fuel filter and whatnot?
Yeah, so the parts, so it is something that has to come out of pocket because all of those are privatized as means. So of course, if you're like strapped on cash and I can't fix a car with no parts, but if you're able to, basically what time banking does is alleviate the prices off of labor. Not so much the parts, because we're not at that stage, right, to own the means of production for that. So, but I'll get the parts as cheap as I can with what I know is reliable. Right? I'm not going to give you like dirt cheap, but something that is relatively cheap that'll work. That's usually the price range I'll try to go for. But the majority of time banking is alleviating price off of labor, because you turn now an alternator job from $600 to $100 in parts. The rest of $500 was labor. That's 2 hours of my time, and I know how to change an alternator. You know how to change clothes or repair clothes. So yeah, the parts is a valid critique and a valid question, but we don't have the means of production for producing parts like that. So it's cheap but reliable as possible. But the main point of time banking is labor.
That's interesting. And so is the implication that everyone's time equals the same value?
You can make it whatever you want. So we have to, this equating of value is standard thought. Like, I've faced this question many a time.
Oh, thank you,
So
Jack.
is 2 hours really of my time as a mechanic worth 1 sweater, 2 sweaters being hemmed? Yeah, I can't fix that. And everyone else is asking for money, which I don't have. If I can fix a car, right, let's say like on the extreme ends of labor, if someone wants their house clean versus someone getting heart surgery, if it takes someone 12 hours to clean a whole ass house and 12 hours to do heart surgery, they can make that happen. It's not subjective to the value of time and what someone values is, but it's subjective to the individual's need for that time. So it's like in the situation, and I need this to happen. I need my clothes, right, to be fixed and mended. I'll fix your car, whatever, as long as we're on a 1-to-1. So is that surgeon's, doctor's time really worth like that 12 hours of cleaning? That's up to the people to discuss. So long as the transaction goes through and everyone, this is mutual aid, like time banking, it's mutual benefit. Yeah. There's an equal relationship. So the time question for value, right, you can go into many examples, but it's up to the transaction between the two people going about it to determine whether that's time. But maybe I don't think that seaming is worth 2 hours of my mechanic time. Maybe I'll do it for less or more or whatever. But it's up to the people, the transaction, the people doing the time banking that make that value assessment.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you.
And I did see a question. What if I question about getting fired for striking? Then don't strike. Like, so at least in this stage of capitalism, of course, if you wanted to go on strike, but you're at threat for a job and that job is the only thing sustaining your material conditions, don't. Don't put yourself at jeopardy, right, for the greater cause of good. There are already people who are doing that for you, but it's not to make you feel bad. Don't strike if you can. It's saying to at most of what you can do. So if you can't quit your job, or if like, you know, if you do stuff that goes against what your job says in strike, try not to do that, right? Attempt to the capacities at which you can. So if you are going to get fired for striking, contact a lawyer first, right? Or contact someone. Like, strike if you can, right? So it's not all this, I will do as much as I can, fuck the system. You know, if you still need a paycheck that your job supplies you and you sell your labor for, which, you know, gives you your roof and gives you your food, I would err on the side of still doing that job, right? Don't risk getting fired, because especially in today's market, it's almost impossible to find a job, right? Especially, you know, depending on the skills that you have. But don't go ahead and, you know, do things that would get you fired, right? Because most people wouldn't be able to, you know, do the stuff that most organizers would, because they don't have that restriction and limitation of being tied financially to the job, right? So it's almost as if the job dictates what you can do, which is basically more or less the point in the case of capitalism. Is like you're tied to your job financially. As a working class, you sell your labor for subsistent means. So don't do stuff that would get you fired, because we still need you, right? We still need you as the proletariat, as the working class, to make those changes. But do as much as you can, right? Whether it be boycotting every now and then, but it's showing solidarity to your people, doing as much as you can. Great. That's all we're asking everyone to do. Yeah, there are other ways to contribute. Some people have privilege, some people don't, right? Some people have a privilege to educate, and one of those privileges could be right now, right? Some people don't have access to a computer, public, or a laptop or internet connection to engage in one of these education classes or to engage in one of these discussions. So, right, privilege to a perspective, but understand that, you know, even though I just said don't always think about yourself, but think about what it means, right, if you were to materialize these actions, right? Bargaining. I love bargaining. What is it? I posted a TikTok the other day. I changed car oil. I changed the oil change and did stuff, and then I got 2 bags of oranges or mandarins from the tree in the backyard. That was fun. That was great. Now I have 2 bags of oranges, and someone's car oil is no longer gonna be rusty and ugly and dirty inside their engine. It's nice.
I have a follow-up question
Yes,
for my
comrade.
first question. You were talking about reiterating, I guess we were talking about time banking. So I liked how you were saying it was a direct transaction. It wasn't the transaction becomes a relationship. It's a direct communication, this for that, tit for tat. Do you think that loses merit if you have an alternate economy system where it's not time banking, but you're holding a credit in between? So you're saying, well, I gave you a kind of an IOU system. I gave you an hour. You don't have to pay me back right away, but if you could put an hour into the community or give me an hour back at some point, do you think that demerits?
I think it's still up to the person who values that time. So let's say I give out, how would this work? I give out 2 hours of time, but it only takes the person 1 hour to mend. I am now owed 1 hour, and this is how the time bank does it for the Bay Area where I'm at. You are given
Oh,
a credit, right? So what you were saying, you're given a credit, but you still deem whether that hour is worth something to you. So whether you didn't get 2 hours worth out of that, right? I'm still owed 1 hour. Instead of the 2 hours it took to mend, it took 1 hour. I can then go somewhere else in the time bank to be like, I also need an hour's worth of service done. Who else can do that for me? So
wow.
you really need
Cool.
a large time bank for this to work. The Bay Area time bank's relatively small, so the contributions that I make are more of an investment on my part. It's not so immediate, so it's like I can't immediately cash out my 6 hours that I have, right? Because you still need people with services in order to be able to do that. So think of like um, I don't know if you've seen the formation where people sit on each other's legs like chairs. People make the chair shape, but then there's 4 people in a square, and they rely on each
Yes.
other to sit on each other. That's basically what time banking is, right? If I
Love
can
that.
rely on someone, someone can also rely on me. They can rely on someone else. So you really need a big net and a wide array of services in order to make it functional to what people think a comprehensive economic system would be. But for like community, time banking is great because you know the people, I know where you live, but you know the people and you can exchange time and then build a time bank out of your community. But something to the scale of a large economy, right? It would be hard to, go about the logistics, the time, the value, and all that. But the whole essence of the time banking is to foster and build community, to uh, not devalue, but to separate yourselves from the current currency of the economy.
Loved everything you said. I'm gonna hop out. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks, Comrade. Thanks for sticking around.
Hey Jaden, I just wanted to touch on some things with the survival programs. I know I dropped it in the chat, but like we can call them survival programs or like services to the communities. Our general strike chapters are encouraged, if they are boots on the ground to engage in some type of service to the community or connect with other groups that are involved with these services, to establish more safety nets on the local level. But this initiative, these programs will help those I said in the chats who might not been able to strike in the past, but with these needs being met, they'll be able to resist as much as possible. Also, considering those that can bring in the numbers, that's potential energy. It's like our unhoused community, which we often forget. I try to connect with the unhoused community in my local area. I even have them sign a strike card. Essentially, we are striking against the system. Even though they don't punch a clock, have a 9 to 5, the system, they have been victimized by the system as well, and they have a right, to strike and resist against that as well. So we have potential energy, across the board here.
Oh yeah, we can't forget about our these disenfranchised populations, like prison, of course. That's one giant population that we can tap into. The unhoused, right? The unemployed, the all of these detachments of the working class are still a part of the working class. They're still being oppressed equally, if not, or more so or less, by the ruling class. So even though we are different, same, different, right? We are a part of the working class. We are a part of the people who are oppressed by this capital owning individuals. So yes, the recordings will be on YouTube Friday, noonish, ish, about whereabouts there, and it's a raw cut. So from start to finish, this is how it's gonna be. There's no editing involved. It's all raw. It's all real conversations that we have, real and raw.
Thank you so much. I'll be heading out now.
Cool. Thanks, comrade. So if you need to leave, don't feel like you need to say goodbye. These are recorded. You won't hurt my feelings. You won't hurt him. But if you do need to go, don't worry about saying goodbye. Just if you need to hit that end call, then go where you need to go. Cool. Thanks, Day. Thanks, all. I'll be out 2 minutes exactly, 5:10. Then I'm gonna leave. So if you have any more questions or whatnot, maybe want to hang out, chat, yeah, does look to seem that about that time. So thank you for being here. Right, if you're watching, thank you, and if you're still here, thank you. Do these every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Then they get uploaded on Friday, just so I can sulk in it a little bit. And then we'll be back next week, same time Wednesdays for an hour, talking about some nonsense. I don't know, maybe it'll be like this week. We'll always get a suggestion out of the Discord, and then we'll figure out what we talk about from that. So thank you for being here. Appreciate you all. A power of the people. Long live the resistance. Love you all. Thank you for being here.